Hey friends, welcome to the At-Home Sunday meeting. I'm Johnny, I go by he, him, and I'm swinging here in Fishtown. Why don't you tell us in the live chat right now where you're swinging from? We want to know where you're coming from, how you found us, and one way to do that is by going right to the live chat right now and go ahead and tell us where you're coming from. We want to love on you, and that's a good way to do that. You can also go back to circleofhope.church, and there you'll find a place to sign in. And the hosts right now can write in the link, give you that link, right in the live chat, give you the link to sign in, and you can let us know that you are here. We care about you, and we want to know you and connect with you. So I hope you can do that. This time that we're having together should be joy-filled, like this playground behind me is. We want to have a good time together, celebrating, laughing, having a common experience. Jordan is going to lead us in a meditation to begin this meeting on the image of God, and then we'll get to worship God together. And I hope that you have an authentic experience in worshiping our Savior together. And doing so on an online format can be a little bit difficult, but I want you to stretch yourself to try to make it happen. Do your best to make it a real, authentic experience. One way you can do that is by singing out loud where you're from. If you feel moved by something that someone says or sings, go ahead and type that into the live chat and let us know. Sing out your praise via the screen that way. And then connect with your family or your friends that are near you. Get them in on the meeting as well. Have them sign in as well. The more people that are involved, the more real this thing will feel, and the more real it will be, because even though a screen separates us, the Holy Spirit can break that boundary and authentically connect us with one another. So enter into this time as you can. It is a blessing to be together. You are a joy. And I hope that, just like this playground behind me, you have a good time at this meeting too and have some fun.
Hi, I'm Damian Washington, he, him pronouns, and I'm coming to you from Northeast Philly, and I'm one of their hosts for our online meeting at Circle of Hope.
Hi everyone, my name is Charles Langley Jr. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm one of your hosts for the At-Home Sunday meeting, and I'm so glad you guys could join us today.
It says in Genesis that human beings were created in the image of God. But when I look at the people around me, is it easy to see the image of God in them? Not always, and if I'm honest, it's difficult more often than not. Even on my best days, I see people according to whatever measure of patience and love I happen to have at that moment, and most of the time I don't have much of either. These past 18 months have made it even harder. I've learned at times to be grateful for the connections that I'm missing, but I've also learned to be a little bit nervous about the presence of others. Anxiety about transmission and uncertainty about social cues put up more veils that make it harder to see my neighbor for who they are. And what about myself? Is it easy to see the image of God in myself? It's even harder, I think, to see goodness in myself than it is to see it in others. Often I just feel empty and confused. How could I be anything like God? So where can I go to see the image of God? And what does it look like? In Colossians it says, He, that is Jesus, the Son of God, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in him all things in heaven and earth were created. And then goes on, in him all things hold together. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that he might have first place in everything. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him God was pleased to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, by making peace through the blood of his cross. We see the image of God in Jesus, and most especially in his death on a cross. This is the picture of who God is. The crucifixion is a window through which God's self-giving love pours into the world, reaching out and embracing all things, and filling them with God's presence, even our neighbor, even ourselves. If I want to see the image of God in myself and my neighbor, perhaps the first thing is to change my posture. Instead of scrutinizing them for what they lack or being irritated that they don't measure up to a standard that I hardly come close to be open and receptive to whatever measure of love they have to give, because that is God shining through them. Perhaps seeing in the image of God begins by being willing to extend myself for my neighbor and being a part of Jesus' embrace of them in whatever small way that I can. There might be images of God all around me, waiting to be found. So many windows through which the light of God's love is pouring all the time.
Thank you, Jordan, for that meditation. Now we're going to enter into a time of worship through song. We have 3 different songs that the team is going to lead you in. There'll be a bunch of us, there'll be different kinds of people leading you to worship, so enter into the time as you can. Do your best to use the gifts that are here to help you connect with God. I hope you have an authentic experience where you can relate to God as you relate to one another. Sing out loud, connect with the live chat and the people leading you to worship. Enter in again as you can. There's no right way to do this, but the more you put into it, perhaps the more you'll get out of it.
Take heart, you are a child of God. Have faith, be brave, forward, you'll face. Take heart, you are my feet stable ground. May I rest in your grace as you stay with me, as you stay with me. My strength, my God, as I am refined. Long for love, long for peace, long for calm in the deep. Let me be your light as you stay with me, as you stay with me. See your beauty in my own defeat. Lift my head up high, guide my feet stable ground. May I rest in your grace as you stay with me, as you stay with me, as you stay with me.
Just as a mother cannot forget the child she has bore, our God will not forget us. Our bodies come from her bone, her likeness shows in our love. Our God will not forget us. Even in our weakest hour, the mother's love remains. Even when we turn our eyes, the mother's gaze stays. how deep the mother's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that she would give herself to us and ask nothing in return.
Thank you, team, for leading us to worship. Now we have my friend Danny, who's going to share a message with us about a question that we can all agree with. Here's Danny.
I'm excited and glad to be with you guys tonight in this capacity, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to have discussion on something that's so near and dear to my heart. As our church community continues to dive into questions that we agree with, and having recently worked through a framework for wealth redistribution in an effort to ease a small fraction of the generational burden placed on our Black brothers and sisters, the question, should we be proactive in our inclusivity, has been at the forefront of my mind. Inclusivity can feel daunting and burdensome, and to those in traditional seats of power in our culture, the questions of why be inclusive and is it worth it are often met with answers like, it's too difficult, that's unreasonable, and no. But our work here, church, is not to hold on to the existing paradigms, but to be transformed by the renewing of our minds that we may discern the will of God. The life of Jesus demonstrates to us that there is nothing too difficult or too unreasonable when it comes to the inclusion of oppressed peoples. And that he answers the question of should we be proactive in our inclusivity with a resounding yes. There are many people and circumstances that deserve our attention. So I'm going to take this opportunity to teach about a group of people that we often forget, even when we're actively engaging in the work of inclusivity in our churches and communities. I am talking about disabled people. What does Jesus teach us in caring for the disabled? And as an extension of that, what is our work? In the Gospels, there's a story of a woman who is afflicted by constant bleeding. And the last 12 years, she spent all of her savings seeing doctors and was left in worse condition. This is a story that's shared by many, many disabled people. This woman is disabled by her chronic bleeding, but she's also disabled by the cultural response to her illness. And both of these things are important in understanding the response of Jesus. I kind of feel like the Bible glosses over the disability of this woman and want to give you a clearer picture of what an issue of blood means. There are numerous possible causes for bleeding, like uterine fibroids, endometriosis, and polyps. Each of these conditions can be incredibly painful. They cause bloating and pelvic pressure, dizziness, fainting, weakness, low blood pressure, increased heart rate, anemia, and severe fatigue. And this fatigue doesn't go away with rest. On top of what these physical symptoms were doing in her body, she also had to live with the ways that the world disabled her. She was considered unclean, and this means that she couldn't enter the temple. If she was unwed, this would have disqualified her from being eligible to get married. If she was married, this would have been adequate grounds for her husband to divorce her if he decided that's what he wanted to do. Her unclean status caused her to be socially and religiously isolated. But how did Jesus respond to her? When the woman touched Jesus' cloak, she made him unclean too. This would have been considered a great burden to Jesus, so much so that if he desired it, she could have received punishment under the law for touching him. He feels the power of her healing leave his body, and he calls out to know who has touched him. She's said to have been trembling as she comes before Jesus and tells him of her healing. And rather than meeting her with wrath and treating her as a burden, like what the rest of the world saw when they looked at her, he commends her faith and tells her to go in peace. He made her well. He restored her life to her community and wished her well, even though it meant more work for him, even when he would have been culturally justified in meeting her harshly. Disability is still socially and religiously isolating today. 26% of Americans are disabled. That's a little bit more than 1 in 4. Between the years of 1986 and 2004, the National Organization on Disabilities conducted a survey on the religiosity of people with and without disabilities. In all 5 years that data was collected, disabled people were less likely to attend a religious gathering once or more a month than their non-disabled counterparts. The largest discrepancy recorded in the data occurred in the year 2000, showing that disabled people were 18% less likely to attend religious gatherings than their able-bodied counterparts, even though both groups surveyed reported that their faith had an equally important role and significance in their lives. So, why are disabled people less likely to go to church? One thing that I often say, and that I hope sticks in your mind today, is that if you look around you and you don't see disabled people, it's because you haven't made room for us. We want to be in our communities. Many of us want to be in our churches, but we're still culturally isolated because of our disabilities. Churches fought and won the right to be exempt from the Americans with Disabilities Act, which means that in many cases, a disabled person will never even make it through the church door. Some will be able to enter the church, but won't be able to get into the sanctuary, or they won't be able to use the bathroom, or if we speak the words of Jesus but offer no closed captions or sign language, deaf people will never feel welcomed or loved in our church. More than 90% of church-going parents of disabled children said that the most helpful support for them would be a welcoming attitude toward people with disabilities. With these things in mind, let's put our attention back into the scripture and onto Jesus. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is found in Luke chapter 5. Starting at verse 17, one day Jesus was teaching, and Pharisees and teachers of the law were sitting there. They had come from every village of Galilee and from Judea and Jerusalem, and the power of the Lord was with Jesus to heal the sick. Some men came carrying a paralyzed man on a mat and tried to take him into the house to lay him before Jesus. When they could not find a way to do this because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and lowered him on his mat through the tiles into the middle of the crowd, right in front of Jesus. And when Jesus saw their faith, he said, "Friend, your sins are forgiven." To me, this story is more about the 4 friends of the paralyzed man than the man himself. And Jesus' response to them tells us who we're meant to be too. It is better to tear off the roof of our buildings to bring more people in to meet Jesus than it is to let them stay outside. It is better to tear down the stairs and install a ramp than it is to keep our disabled brothers and sisters on the curb. It is better that we learn sign language than it is to continue the isolation from faith communities for our deaf brothers and sisters. It is better to have virtual services than it is to keep our homebound brothers and sisters isolated from community. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 14 through 27 say, "For the body does not consist of one member, but many. If the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, then that would not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I do not belong to the body, that would not make it any less part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God arranged the members of the body, each one of them as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many body parts, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hands, I have no need for you, nor again the head to the feet, I have no need for you. On the contrary, the parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And on those parts of the body that we think less honorable, we bestow the greater honor, and our unpresentable parts are treated with greater modesty, which our more presentable parts do not require. But God has composed the body, giving great honor to the part that lacked it, that there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. Now, you are the body of Christ, and individually members of it. If we're not proactive in our inclusivity, aren't we needlessly amputating part of our body and causing pain to the whole of us? I think it's important that we think on these things and broaden our gaze to see the people who are invisible to us right now. They are just as integral to our body, and we need them, and they need us. So let's be proactive in our inclusivity.
Danny, thanks so much for sharing your story. Thank you for your vulnerability and for your depth. We really appreciate it. Speaking of depth, I want to help you get deeper into this meeting and into our church, and there's a few ways that we can do that. The first thing you can do is like this video. Go ahead and like it right now. If you like it, more people will see it on YouTube. If you subscribe, that'll even help us further. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers to unlock YouTube features for our little channel. So subscribe if you haven't. Like and subscribe, and then share this video with people that you think might be blessed by it. We're not very concerned with how successful we're being, but we're starting a new thing and we want more people to connect to it. So share this video on your news feed or via email or even just with your friends. Help more people connect to us. And if you haven't signed in, please go back and sign in. We want to know that you are here and we want to connect with you. If you're watching this later, not live streamed, go ahead and sign in as well. You still count. You're still a part of our body. So like, subscribe, share, and sign in. You can also share money with us at our common fund. Go to circleofhope.church and you can find a tab for giving. Sharing money with us helps this part of our church keep going. It helps our whole church keep going as well. And if you want to unlock something within you, learn to be generous with your money. You know, that really helps, I think, God work in our lives. That flexibility, that agility, that ability to let go and be generous changes how we relate to money, how we relate to our economy, how we relate to one another, and how we relate to God. So go ahead and share in common with us. And then when you are on our website, check out our cells. You might want to get connected to one of these circles of 10 that meet in homes where God is experienced just through the relationships that we're having. Our whole church is premised under this idea that God can be experienced through relationships. Just like it's happening in this meeting, it can happen in cells, some of which meet in person, some of which meet online, many of which meet as a hybrid between the two. So you can connect that way as well. I want to leave you with just a closing prayer here. This whole week, my heart has been heavy for the country of Afghanistan, which has been under U.S. occupation for the last 20 years, and recently we're seeing an end to that occupation. A war that lasts 20 years long can't end very well, and it ended pretty devastating here to the people in Afghanistan who saw a glimpse of what another life could be. And now they're under repression again. And previously they were under occupation, so I don't want to say that they were truly free under U.S. occupation. But their lives have dramatically shifted. We're praying that the U.S. continues to bring refugees into our country, expediting the visa process. We're praying that surrounding countries can accept the most vulnerable in Afghanistan. But we know that even relocation and resettlement, as long as it takes and as good as it is for people that need it, still throws our lives into shambles. It really is disruptive. So I pray for the Afghan people, for the harm the U.S. has caused them, for the harm that the Taliban has caused them, and for the turmoil that they are in right now. I pray for stability and hope for them, and I hope you can join me in that prayer. I hope Christians can continue to take a stand against the evils of war, the evils of repressive regimes, and show the world another way through our Savior, Jesus Christ. Go in peace.